avoiding the pain is not helping you to get the joy. It can be opposite.
Yeah, it's like putting a band-aid on,
Mm.
but it's still infected.
Hi there. Welcome to Day Day Meditation Podcast. This is a place where we learn to live in the present moment together. In this episode, Rachel shares her journey to Athens. This is not your typical travel talk. It's a deep reflection about meaning, about pain and joy.
I love history
Mm.
and I love philosophy. And for a very long time, since I started reading and writing, I always loved philosophy and history. Those two subjects mean a lot to me.
Mm.
And so I have always wanted to go to Greece,
Mm.
Athens mostly, because I realized that half of Greek population live in
Mm.
Athens. If you realize that,
Oh, I
like
didn't know about
today,
that.
50%, yeah, 50%
Oh,
of total population live in Athens
oh.
in a city. But obviously Greek or history and Greece in general, it has been a city states. So think of them as kind of city state instead of like you know like other countries in the world. So um, I think I have been wanting to go for almost 15 years since in college I took classes in Greek histories and philosophies, and so I know all of that methodologies and stuff like that, and so I always wanted to go there. And this time around, I think it meant a lot to me. I kind of had a mission in mind before I
Mm.
went, was kind of broad. So
Oh,
before I went, I actually had a mission that was I was gonna go on this trip in search for the meaning of life, my life at least. And I took a book with me by a philosopher that I really like a lot. I read a lot of his books. But this book is new to me, so I brought it with me. It's called Travel with Epicurus, in search for the meaning of life. And the author was traveling to Greek islands and in search of the meaning of his life. And he's a philosopher, so obviously he took a lot of philosophical books with him. But I took this single book with me, and so I went. So I kind of was following his footsteps. I was trying to find the the Garden of Epicurus in Athens, somewhere in Athens. And as I was looking for it, it's very similar to Aristotle or like Plato. They had academy and they had their like schools in Athens. So Epicurus had a garden, so I was looking for that. So yeah, that was my mission before I went. It was quite broad, just to search for the meaning of my life.
I see. Well, did you find the meaning of your life?
Um, yes, no. I didn't find an answer.
Mm.
I just felt like after the trip, I I think I found some different perspective of thinking about things. So not an answer, but definitely shifted uh my perspective towards uh towards a lot of things, like you mentioned, certainty versus uncertainty and destiny versus randomness.
Mm. So you didn't find the meaning of your life, but you find um that you have some peace with some questions that you have with you. That
That's
you
right. Yeah, because for a very long time, philosophically, I always believed in destiny,
mm,
right? There is a destiny for myself, for everybody else, and it's already written.
mm,
Um, and then um, and then all we are doing in life is to reach that destiny. A
Mm,
lot of us eventually reach the destiny. A lot of us missed somewhere in the middle, missed, kind of lost themselves, lost the way somehow. So they never reached it, reached they never reached the destiny. But deep down, I believe there is a destiny for myself, for, people. So that was what I believed before I went.
mm,
But it didn't change the answer. So I didn't find a different answer or didn't find an answer. But the new perspective that I found was destiny and randomness, these kind of opposites things, they are just two sides of the same coin. So they go hand in hand, grief, love, these pairs of opposites. That's a different perspective that I found because of this trip.
mm. Yeah, so you mentioned destiny and randomness are not opposites. How do you interpret this? Why they are not opposites?
Well, they are opposites, but they're the two sides, right? Opposite sides of the
Oh.
same coin,
Mm, mm, mm,
right? For example, people like us, we always, if you ask, what are you searching? What's the meaning of life? That you're always kind of searching some kind of happiness, regardless of how you define happiness. You want you're looking for happiness,
mm,
right, in life. And the happiness can be defined, individually by, a success or at work or life, but eventually everyone seems to be searching for happiness, right? So if you are facing a decision, you're always just kind of inclined to pick the one that makes you happy or happier, right?
mm,
And then to avoid pain,
mm,
right? As if it's the very bad things that we wanted to avoid,
mm.
right? But two sides, like pain and happy, are two sides of the same coin, means that whatever decision that you're making, you're gonna live with both sides. You're not necessarily choosing one over the other or avoiding one, right? So it's like rewards and risk kind of thing, right? You pick, the path that's going to give you a bigger rewards, then you have to bear the same or higher risk of doing it, right? So it's always the other side that you need to, live with. And I feel like that was a different perspective versus what I had before. And that really changed my perspective about making decisions in my life in general,
How?
right? To not like the path is the right way or the way should be not to avoid pain or pick the decision, the path that avoids the most pain, but to pick the one that you really want that will create, the highest happiness level.
Mm,
But in your mind, you should be thinking about, living with the way that you respond to these things is that you should, be ready to live with the possible pain that's going to come your way.
so we need to be ready to live with the pain that could
Yeah,
come
because you
our
you
way.
you you you're choosing the path that you think that will create the most happiness for you, right?
Mm,
And but you shouldn't be making the decision just because you feel like it's gonna also create a lot of pain,
mm,
right? It's hard, it's harder path, right? It's a path less traveled by, and then you don't have any role model who kind of went down this path. So you're avoiding that, right? Uncertainty,
mm,
right? So you're making a decision um just based on the certainty level of this path.
mm,
What I'm saying is that you should know that certainty and uncertainty, happiness and pain are kind of two sides of the same coin. So you're picking the coin. So you should be prepared that to you should be prepared for both sides basically.
So it's like yes, you could choose the side that make you happier, but at the same time be prepared or embrace the possibility that the opposite might show up. There might be pain, unfortunate things that could come with it. So like not kind of just focus on the side that give you happiness, but like be open to both sides and kind of find the balance of the
That's right.
side.
That you're almost there.
Um,
It's not picking the side, it's to
um,
accept the entire pair,
yeah.
right? To look at different situations, different paths, different decisions with both sides in mind.
Mm,
Mentally, people would like to avoid pain, right? So, for example, they are afraid to love deeply because they know that if they get too attached to this, then if this relationship breaks later, it
mm,
will bring deeper grief, right? So they are afraid of that, right? So then they don't allow themselves to love deeply in the first place. That's how most of people are making decisions nowadays, right? Instead of looking at whether this path is what you truly want the most, they're doing the pros and cons and they're like trying, and by the end of it, it's a suboptimal decision, not an optimal decision,
mm.
considering all facts. It's suboptimal because you're trying to seek the highest happiness path, but then you're also trying to avoid the pain. That will lead you to a different path, right? So I feel like that's kind of a different perspective we should take on in terms of making decisions. I was like that before I went to this trip, and then it changed my perspective about things. And I realized that you have to accept both sides,
Mm, yeah.
right? And sometimes like people, not only at the beginning of making decisions, they're thinking about, avoiding pain. Even in the middle of it or by the end of it, they're still kind of brainwashing themselves, trying to not look at the opposite side,
Mm,
trying to kind of brainwash themselves like, yeah, that wasn't like, I don't want to look at it, right? I don't want to acknowledge that just to make themselves feel better, right? So not looking at the failures, not looking at the defeat, just to make them feel better, which is very, human nature, right? To avoid pain,
yeah. So like
right?
in the short term, it does help them to avoid pain. However, in the long term, that's like optimal happiness. The true happiness is when we are accepting both sides.
That's right, because that's the truth.
Mm.
However, you avoiding to look at the other side, it's always there. It has been there, both sides. So you're just like lying to yourself, to
Yeah,
other people,
yeah,
right?
yes. Avoiding the pain is not helping you to get the joy. It can be opposite.
Yeah, it's like putting a band-aid on,
Mm,
but it's still infected.
mm,
But to cure something, for example, a failure, for example, or defeat, or
mm.
breakup, you just have to face it and cure it. It's only by then you are, you know, growing out of this, you have real growth, and then you're ready for the next relationship.
So really, really has to face the pain, face the failure, really feel it, and be okay with this, not afraid of this pain, not afraid of this failure. And if we can reach this stage, this mindset, that's how we know we are ready for something else. We we could be truly happy.
That's right. Yes. Yes. Because at that time, you're just lying to yourself of not looking at the other side, not admitting that you failed, right? And it's only after you kind of go through that or face it, your deepest fear. I mean, it's all just you facing your own deepest fear. Nobody is like care. Nobody cares about like what you're doing, but it's you, right? So it's a real growth that you want in your life. I personally believe that we grow more in failed situation, after the failed situation versus in successful situations. We grow more personally. And that's the meaning of life is to grow, right? Not
Exactly.
making the same mistakes next
Exactly.
time. It's not about avoiding mistakes, avoiding pain. It's just not, it's about growth. So not, you're not making the same mistakes. So deep down, no one was looking, no one was trying to like, monitoring how you react to things. It's just you, right? It's looking internally. Don't lie to yourself, right?
Yeah, and because this is your because only you knows about this question, this pain, this failure that you are dealing with. And if we are not really facing it, no one will push us to do it.
Yeah, no,
And oftentimes we avoid it, we lie to ourselves, and we keep making the same mistakes, repeating the same pattern.
patterns. Yes, I mentioned something about. So I made a video.
Yeah.
It's on my YouTube now. I have a food channel, obviously, but this is the only video that I didn't talk about food
Oh.
entirely, and it's like the longest video that I ever made. But I talk about patterns. And I talk about stories because Greek, theaters are, the oldest theater in human history. And they did a lot of theaters and comedies and tragedies. So I was talking about stories, right? Story has a beginning, has a rise and climax and fall, right? So like I said, you know, the rise and the fall are two sides of the same coin. Without the fall, the climax is meaningless. Like, what is a climax if you don't have a fall? Like, where's the top? Right? So, you know, is life a tragedy or is a life a comedy? I ask myself, right? It's both, right? So, and then so when you kind of look at from far away or like perspective in terms of time, and you look back in time and you realize there is beauty in everything. There's beauty in the happiness, there's beauty in the pain, there's beauty in love, there's beauty in loss, right? So all these pairs actually cannot exist without the other.
Mm.
And so in terms of failures and loss and facing your deepest fear, I remember a quote from another book that I read was when you face directly to your own deepest fear and then come out the other way, you will grow, kind of, you will find your biggest strength,
Hmm.
right? So there's a fire, there's a situation. The only way to grow from this is to walk through it directly, come out the other way. You'll be a different person. But a lot of people avoiding situation like that, right? At all costs. Some of them avoid this their entire life at all costs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So they're lying to themselves, then so they didn't, going through life, they didn't grow as a person. Right? We all kind of like encounter similar situations in life, at different time point. But some people are able to grow stronger out of these situations, and some people are not. And that made all the difference.
Yeah. Because when we are going through this, we really learn it in our own eyes, in our skin, like we feel it. And everyone's experience is very different. Like only you going through this can get you the answer.
That's right. Yes. Yes. It's all you. It's all just myself
Mm,
here, right? So when you ask, did I find an answer? I said I didn't find the answer, but I find perspective. What does that mean? Like, what's the difference between a perspective and an answer? Um, in my mind, philosophically, I think the world, that we see, it's all in our own mind. So, right, it can be the same situation, but when you look at it, you see something. And
mm,
then when I look at the same thing, the same glass of water,
mm,
or like, you know, when someone like when you accidentally break, push the glass on the ground and they break, right? When you see the same situation, it's your perspective about what happened, right?
mm,
So one person can feel like really frustrated by this, and another person might be like, "Oh, that's okay. It means like like it's fine. Like maybe that means I need to buy a new one." So it's not the fact, right? It's not the actual world that we're. It's actually just our perspective, different perspective. So in another word, it's like, what is the world around us? No, it's the world in your mind, in your heart.
mm.
What does that look like, right? So that's the different. So things are not like answers, but perspectives.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Then Rachel, I'm very curious, how did like Athens give you this new perspective? Like to see destiny, randomness, to see certainty versus uncertainty, like to kind of find a peace between these two seemingly opposites sides.
Um, to answer your question, I think the reason why is because Greek history is probably one of the longest human history.
Yeah.
You know, even like all the way to 1500 BC, right? So they've gone through a lot. And I went to search for the meaning of my life, which is probably like 70, 80 years in terms of the time span. But then I went to a place that has 3,500 years of history or stories. That really broadened my perspective about things, about time, about
Mm,
failures, about my own failures versus you know 3,500 years of histories and fall and rise and empires, etc. So when you're like looking at that and then compare it to your little problems in life, your pain in life, it really put myself into perspective. It really humbled me a
mm,
lot. So I think that initially I just because I like history and that's where history and philosophy started. So I went there. But by the end of it, it really had this significant impact on my perspective and way of thinking because of that. Because I was there in December in Athens. Highly recommend if you like history, not really into the beach and sunshine. No tourists, just me and just sitting, the only person. And then in front of me is the Acropolis is it's I was sitting just by myself and across from me I was sitting on the bench and across from me is the prison of Socrates where Socrates was imprisoned, you know, thousands of years ago. So that was very impactful to me of thinking about things and thinking about the meanings of life, my life, and when you it really humbles me a lot. This trip, when I was looking at Greek history or history as in terms of that big of a time span.
Mm. So like this trip really like kind of grab you out of your day-to-day problems or things that you are dealing with, all kind of things that it's in our day-to-day life. Like really look at this from a bigger perspective, and realize that we are really small. We're just a tiny moment in this bigger um history that is oftentimes repeating itself.
History repeats itself. Yes, right. So patterns again. And
Mm.
yes, it humbles me because it's the 3,500 years history versus my little problem. And it's also about like when we are going through our own pain and we tend to think that it's wow, that was the worst, you know, situation I ever experienced. I don't want to experience ever again, etc. Right? Because human natures are kind of weak
Mm.
and temporary, right? So naturally, at the bottom of this, you seek more permanent things. It gives you comfort, right? So that's why human history, there's religions, there's worship, right? Because we are naturally seeking more permanent guiding light, especially in these, you know, situations where I feel like I cannot control the outcome. And it has a huge impact on my life. So Greek history, 3,500 years, and when I went to Athens, it gives me that comfort because I was able to see a much bigger perspective about things and compare that with what I have been through.
So were you saying that like looking at the history, it make your problems much smaller and much kind of temporary?
No, everything, I mean, I think history is also 3,500 years is still history of people. So it's still it's still temporary.
Mm,
What I meant is, like you
mm,
mentioned, patterns,
mm.
right? When we experience things ourselves, we feel like that was the end of the world. That moment was definitely the end of the world, at least my world,
The end of the
right?
war, at the same time, it feels like it's permanent.
Exactly, exactly, right? So I mean, it's natural to think that way, right? Because it's just me, right, versus the world, right? And so it just naturally felt like I experienced it recently too, is I felt like that was the end of the world for me. I mean, it could be end of the world for somebody else, but it doesn't matter to me. But what's most relevant is that my world ended,
Mm.
right? But then when I went to Athens and you look at 3,500, like they've been like Greek people or culture, they've been invaded many, many times, right? And they're still there. The Acropolis, um, was there for 35, like it was always there. There's sort of wars, there's like rise and there's false human like empires and everything. And they're still there, right? So naturally, it humbled me.
Mm.
It's more permanent
Yeah.
than I thought it was,
Mm.
right? Patterns. So that naturally made my what I've gone through kind of like, oh, okay, that's actually norm, right? Not a lot, not like, I was so special. Why did I have to go through that? Like, it's norm.
So, Rachel, I have a question. So in the end of your video, you were mentioning like living deeply is not about certainty. It's about staying with questions gently, fully awake here and now. But what if us, not knowing the answer, living with uncertainty, it's just really uncomfortable. And
It is uncomfortable.
yeah,
Yeah, by
really
nature, it is.
it's really uncomfortable for us, how do you make yourself, okay with this?
You don't have to be okay with it. That's the point. It's about accepting the situation, the uncomfortableness at the same time. I went to Delphi, the Oracle, right? That's where the know thyself was kind of carved. Very famous quote. Oracle of Delphi was basically, 3,000 years ago, Greek people or some of the kings or emperors, they typically before any significant event, war or anything like that, they would go to Delphi and ask. They ask God, is this gonna be, am I winning this? Or am I losing this? Should I go to war or should I make this decision? They went there to ask God. They wanted some certainty about the future, right? But what they got was from God, know thyself. That was very unsettling when I visited Delphi, right? Just like many others in Greek history, ancient history, who went there asked for certainty. I was there too, asked for my future, wanted some certainty because human nature, it's not very comfortable with unknowns, with things that we cannot control outside of our control. It's just not comfortable. So the point is not about doing something to make ourselves comfortable or try to control or gain some control back. It's actually about making yourself comfortable with the uncertainty. So that was the perspective that I gained throughout the trip was accepting the coin as a whole that has both sides. Every of your decisions, every path that you go on or choose will have by default two sides. So it's don't lie to yourself, don't hide it, don't pretend it's not there. Live with both sides. It's just a fact that you have to accept. Instead of trying different ways to change the fact or make yourself a little more comfortable.
Hmm.
It's lying to yourself, right?
Yeah.
So when I say fully, it all means completely, right? Both sides. Live fully, not just live the happier ones, avoiding the pain or pretending that it's not there. It's live fully, deeply, is to live with both sides and both at the same time.
Hmm. So this is a kind of like a process of getting to know the truths of life, like really know it, which is there will be pain and beauty, and usually they come together. If there's no pain, there's no beauty. Um, and oftentimes when it's just so painful that we're just so uncomfortable, or when we're suffering so much and we could not get out of this, it might be because that we are only looking at one side, that we did not realize that, hey, there are two sides. Um, so healing comes when we get to know the truth, when we get to know ourselves.
Exactly. Know thyself. That's exactly what it means, right? Know thyself, right? Looking inward, right? People go to Delphi to look for externally for some kind of comfort about the future. But then we're sent back. The message was look internally, look inward to yourself,
Mm,
face your own deepest fear, deepest desire,
mm.
face it. That's where the biggest strength comes from, right? That's the source.
Face it. Before we facing it, I feel like there's a step to actually know it. Like know that
Yes,
the
exactly.
fear.
Know thyself. What does that mean? Like, yeah, who I am, right?
Yes.
My strength, my weaknesses, my limits, my values, right? Like everything kind of consists of you, right? So look inward, look at your limits. Ask yourself, what are your limits? Acknowledge that you have limits in the first place, right? There's another about stoicism, there's another quote about like, our ego, right? Ego is our enemy,
Mm,
Our biggest enemy is ourselves, our ego, right? So like there's a lot of situations where people don't acknowledge that you have limits and they go out of their limits to do things, broke boundaries, go against their values, right? So it's all because as a result of ego, right? We think we're great and
mm,
we don't have weaknesses, or we don't want to face our deepest fear, right? So to me, this reminded me another. It's actually a serenity prayer. If you heard about it, kind of, it's more of a serenity prayer to God. And what it says was, you know, grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things I can. And most importantly, is that third sentence is that grant me the wisdom to know the difference, right? And it's very impactful, right? Please grant me the serenity
mm,
to accept the things I cannot change that's outside of my control. Please give me the peace to just accept it.
mm,
And then also grant me courage to change the things I can. I am able to. Give me the courage because it's hard to change things, to grow. It's hard, it's uncomfortable to face these situations. And then the third sentence is the most important, is please also grant me the wisdom to know the difference, meaning in what situations that I can change and in
mm,
what situations I cannot change and I should accept
mm,
my limitations.
mm,
It's a serenity prayer to God, right? So only God can grant you this kind of power and wisdom, right? Because human natures are a bit temporary and weak in that sense,
mm. And
right? So
yeah.
it's the same thing. It's again, they go in pairs. Things that you can change, things you cannot change. Courage and serenity, right? They all. So that's what I meant by live deeply means live fully. I think there's that quote about like, I chose the path less traveled by, and that made all the difference. I think I wanted to kind of modify that a little bit. I think the difference in our lives, we face the same similar situations at different point in time, right? Be it work or study or work or life in general, we kind of face more or less similar situations. But then what was the difference? What made the difference between people's life and outcomes? I think the difference is how we each responded. That made all the difference. Facing the same situation, breakup or pain or failures, how you responded versus how I responded, that made all the difference. It's not like you're lucky that you always just have successful things and no, it's not. That difference didn't, you know, come from that. It comes from how we each responded. And more importantly, and most important in this situation is how we responded to ourselves.
Mm,
Right? How you responded to the other world or the situations, how you responded. That's one part of it. But what really made the biggest difference is how we responded to ourselves and how honestly we responded to ourselves. That goes back to why when you face your biggest fear head on, right? that's where the biggest strength comes from because I mean, right? No one is forcing you, and you can lie to yourself and be, just looking the other way. But the difference is made. The biggest strength comes from how you respond to yourself honestly, fully.
Mm. So, Rachel, then the question comes, how can people reach that point? How can people respond to themselves fully without going to Athens, like what you did? Like in your day-to-day life, right? We want to find some simple ways that can help us to practice this mindset. Yeah.
Yes, it's in human nature or habits already to avoid pain, right? So to change this habit, it's a habit, right? To to change this habit, you definitely need some time and some actions, and it's definitely going to be uncomfortable, right? So I think the first thing is to change the perspective
Mm.
about things. Like, what I did. I didn't find the answer and I didn't find the best way to go through my own life, but I changed my perspective about things and that made all the difference, right? And the perspective is to accept that there are both sides of the same coin. Accept the uncertainty, accept the things that you cannot control, accept failures.
Okay, Rachel, then let me challenge you so that we make it fun. What if I just could not accept? I know that, there are two sides. I know that there are pain, there are also joy, happy, but I just could not accept pain.
So you just meaning that you want to still make your decisions uh avoiding the most painful path. Is that what you meant? Like just when you say you just cannot accept it, does that mean
Right,
like
right.
just
Like the
before you make any decisions, you just pick the one with least pain, per, you know, potential pain, right? It didn't even happen, but then you just kind of decided that that's gonna be very painful, or this one is gonna be least painful, so I'm gonna pick it. Like it. So basically, you're saying you're afraid of pain, so you want to always choose the easiest path, the easiest way forward. Is that what you meant?
Yes, always want to choose, but in general, usually it's automatically that people choose that path, even though they know that they they would need to face it. That would be better. But it's hard to have that, courage, capability to tell yourself, hey, this is not the right path. Okay, let me choose not to go there. But this habit of avoiding pain is so strong, and people know it, but people oftentimes could not do it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And you're just probably like, 99% of the world, which is fine. And people still go through lives, but you're not going to grow out of these situations. So it's a waste of you chose the least pain, but it's still wasted because you didn't grow from it. And you're going to repeat the same thing over and over again. And so if that's kind of like mundane life that you want to accept for yourself, I don't force you. But if you want the real growth and be stronger and stronger every time, then my 1% way is probably your best path forward, right? And that made all the difference. No pain, no gain.
So
right?
it's like we we have to face it in order to get the joy. And if we could not face it, no one will be forcing us.
No
And
one, no
there
one.
and there is no judgments either. Whether, this means that my life is a failure because I try to avoid, well, automatically try to avoid pain.
Yeah, yeah. It's just how you want to go through your life, right? What is happiness is really the difference between the reality and your expectation, right? So, and you know, there's another quote about like how, 98% of what we worried about never really happened, right? And so my point is that a lot of people really stopped even before this happens, any of these happens. They just stopped because potentially they're projecting the pain. And that can be 90% of the time can be wrong, right? So 99% of the people, like, right, you're thinking that, oh, like naturally, and it's like everybody's doing that. Who is gonna choose pain? Like on purpose, right? Like so avoiding pain is natural and it's easier and it's within the comfort zone. But let me ask you, like, whatever you're projecting here, like how do you know it's true? Right? So it might actually never happen. And then you just missed the opportunity. So the perspective about making decisions is still about future looking, right? Is looking at these, live with both sides, be okay that both sides will come. And because that's the truth, there wouldn't be a situation only happiness comes from this path and no pain at all. There's no such situation exists. So don't lie to yourself, just accept the fact and make the decision on what is the best path for you instead of the other way is which one is the easiest one
Right. So,
or you
Rachel,
you think
yeah,
would generate the least pain, which
yeah,
can be wrong, right?
yeah, yes. So, Rachel, okay, what if, I know that accept both sides and facing the pain is the best for me, and I really want that. However, the automatic habit is so strong that it just automatically choose the easiest route. It was not my conscious choice. Then in this scenario, what should we do? And I do believe that in many people's life, this is quite common that, we know that this is the best for us and we really want to do that. We really want to face it, but this, body memory, this automatic habit, it's just so strong.
Yeah, yeah, which is very often, there's one of my favorite book, Alchemist, right? A journey to get your personal treasure. And one of the concept in the book is listen to your heart, follow your heart. But then what if you can't, right? Like what if there's a disconnect between you and the heart?
Yes.
You thought that you're following your heart, right? Naturally, that's just like you thought that. But then, in this book, there was a quote was like our heart can be faking sometimes, right? And you just at some point in our lives, maybe you were disconnected with your heart. So you thought you were following your heart, but you're actually not. That's actually not what your heart wants. So I think one of the ways that I go that I practice was reflection,
Mm,
right? I dedicated a lot of time, especially like later in life, once I got into the habit of it, I dedicated a lot of time to self-reflection. I think I don't have many strength in life, but what got me to this point, one piece, is my biggest strength is self-awareness.
mm,
And that self-awareness, so I know myself very well. And that self-awareness comes with it's a great ability to have to know yourself so well. And that comes from practice of self-reflection, daily basis or even like hourly basis. So we just have to make a conscious decision to practice that on a daily basis, right? You don't have to, be like me and do it on a minute basis, but
Mm.
at the end of the day, set aside 30 minutes or so, just think about yourself. What did you do this day? Like, what did you think about? And that encounter at work, and what did you learn from that? Especially, what did you learn about yourself from that situation? How you reacted, right? Stop focusing. People like when we think about like writing down journals, right? At the end of the day, if people have that habits, they tend to like kind of record what happened and the situations and what other people reacted. Focus on yourself,
Mm.
right? You went through like a work related meetings and you reacted certain ways. Reflect on yourself, like what went through your mind in that situation. So, and what does that mean about you, about your limits, about your values, right? Think about these automatic behaviors too, right? By the end of the day, what did I do today? And, some sort of actions and which ones are kind of just out of habits. Just think about these things. Think about yourself,
Mm.
why you think certain ways, why you made that decisions, why you said that. That's what I do on a daily, hourly basis.
Mm.
Um, and that's how you develop this skill sets of learning yourself or like be so self-aware.
Mm.
You know, from the alchemist perspective, it's me talking to my heart every single hour, every single day to keep this connection going strong, right? So I treat my heart as another me. So I have the conversation with my heart on an hourly basis. That's how you keep this connection. And then, so I don't lose the connection to my heart that easily.
Yeah.
And that helped me every time when I make a decision because the decisions will impact other people, but it will impact you mostly, your decisions in life, right? So that's the practice I would suggest people do is, self-reflection, which is just the same thing as talking to your heart. So that next time when you say you're following your heart, you're actually following your heart.
Yes, yes, yes. The self-reflection is so important. Um, yeah, so in terms of the question, like when we are aware that we need to face the pain, um, but automatically we may not be able to do that. Um, my thought is that we can continue to practice being aware of these automatic reactions. I know this automatic reaction is not aligned with our true value because we do want to, see both sides, choose a path that might have a lot of pain for us. Um, but before we're able to choose consciously based on our values, all we need to do is to continue to know ourselves, continue to be aware, okay, in this moment, I automatically choose this and I see it. There's no judgments. There's no judgments like, oh my gosh, why I did that again? Like I should have, choose the path that bring me the most growth. I know it's the best to face the fear, but for now I could not do it. Right? There's a lot of judgments or shame come with this when we're not able to do it, and which is very common. Um, so that so yeah, so continue to be aware without any judgments. And with more and more practice, the choice that align with our values might naturally arise without our without us constantly pushing for it. When we're constantly pushing for it, it just means that we're judging ourselves for not being able to do it. And oftentimes it has the opposite um, result. So
That's right. Yeah, yeah. You definitely you're very spot on why people try to avoid pain or try to avoid talking about failures or try to admitting to themselves that they failed because, you know, the next thing is like you start judging yourself. Why did I fail? Right? Like, am I not good enough?
Mm,
And this self-reflection, my practice will only be helpful when you are self-reflecting like meditation that without any judgment of this. So people are afraid of looking to their deepest fear because they're at the same time being very judgmental of this, of themselves
yes. Yeah.
doing it. So then they just avoid that. So the pain actually comes from the judgment part,
Mm,
not comes from the reflection part. So yes, do it self-reflection and then with a not judgmental way is the only way to go forward with this. And you also mentioned the word consciously or unconscious, right? The opposite is unconscious. And I heard, and I know a quote in psychology was, not exact quote, but what it was saying was, paraphrasing, if you let your unconsciousness control your life and you didn't know, you call it fate. I think it was Carl Jung or someone's quote, right? Again, like when we let our unconscious, right, these automatic things to control our lives and our actions, and we didn't know that that was happening because it's unconscious level, we tend to call it fate. Oh, it's my fate that I'm like in the situation. I'm just gonna accept my fate. I will never be good enough, and this is just the life that I think it's fate, right? Like maybe like there's nothing I can change about it. And there's even if I, try, it's not going to be change the situation, right? So I just call it fate, right? So you just settled. And that typically is when you let your unconsciousness control your lives and you didn't even know about it.
mm,
So the self-reflection, non-judgmental way was trying to bring these unconscious or subconscious actions, behaviors, habits to the conscious level in a non-judgmental way, right?
mm,
Not saying, oh, okay, bring it to the conscious level, but it's bad, then I'm just gonna push it away.
mm,
No, just bring it all up. Why did I do that? Just non-judgmental. Okay, this is a failure. This is a success, right? Equally non-judgmental. But bring all these unconscious to the conscious level, right? You call it fate. You thought that you're following your heart. There's disconnect already. You didn't even know that's happening because it's happening on the unconscious level.
mm.
And that happens to a lot of us in life when we get through like, in our 30s or 40s, you just like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna accept this is just the way it is. Like,
Mm.
why are you doing this? Why did you decide to do that? Everyone is doing it. Everyone is doing this at this age. Like, what do you mean? Like, why am I doing it? But you're avoiding to ask yourself, it doesn't matter what other people are doing it. Why are you doing it?
Right.
And then if you ask that question, I think a lot of people couldn't even answer it because they never like took the time. They just follow the flow, they just go with the flow. It's just yeah, when you graduate from elementary school, you're gonna go to middle school. Like, what do you mean? Like it's the other way, right? So that's typically 99% of the world.
Yeah. Okay, when we really ask the question why we're doing this, it touch our true value. It touch what's truly important for us. And not many people know what's truly important for us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because you never go through the reflection. You
Yeah.
don't know yourself, right? We can talk
Right.
about how we know a certain person, oh, she's like this, he's like that. I think the most important person in this world you need to get to know is yourself.
Yes.
Why are you like this? Why do you do that? Why do you have this strength? And why are you like happy about this but sad about this? I think we should allocate more time to ourselves. To
Yes.
know thyself is
Right.
actually what important. And to talk
Starting
to your heart is
right.
actually important.
Starting right now, as this episode finished, right now, do the reflection.
exactly now
Yes.
and live in the present moment. That's the only moment that you can live in. Do
Yeah.
it now.
Yes.
Start to
And
get to know yourself and start to fall in love with yourself first.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, Rachel, let's talk about Alchemist next time.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Yes. That's my most favorite book. That it's a fiction,
Mm,
but it's probably I don't read a lot of fictions in life in general. It's probably one of the two fictions that I've ever read, and also the book that I read more than 5 times,
wow.
which I typically don't do that because I don't. There's so many other books that I want to read, and I just never got back to the second round of anything. But that was the one that I read so many times. If I only have one book to carry with me, that would be that would be the one. So yeah, definitely love to talk about Alchemist.
Wow. I am sold, so I will read this
Go get your
book.
book. It's like 25 years anniversary already of this book.
Yes. And I definitely look forward to talk with you about this book next time.
It's going to be a lot of episodes about this
Okay.
book. It's a lot of topics that I can talk about for sure.
Look forward to it.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay. Thank you.
okay. Yes, thank you.